Today I'll be breaking down how I produced Waterfalls off my latest album, Undersensitized. And so let's just get right into it. I started off with this sample by Anna Roxanne. I believe this is a cover of a song that was already made. It was from this performance I found at Union Station. So obviously there's a very interesting atmosphere, very roomy, big feeling to this. I'll take out everything else and just play how it was originally. So I pitched it up and then I chopped it up with this part, especially that "you made mistakes too" was something that really stuck out to me. And so after that, I put in the 808, which is from this Clever pack, a very roomy 808. And I side-chained the 808 to this other channel where I only have the treble. And I also put like this very big reverb on it for an 808. And I know that's a big meme, is like reverb on the 808 is something you should never do. But I think for this purpose of making the track feel really big, it made a big difference. And part of that is also this kick, which is from a drill pack actually. And I'm always looking for like the biggest kick. And I think drill and EDM always really come through for that. And so what I'm doing with this kick is I have this Fruity P controller and it automates this so that every time the kick hits, the sample's volume goes down. You can see that happening right here. And then the other P controller is actually automating this EQ. And you can do that by link controller, P control peak, one input. And what that does is that every time the kick hits, there's no more bass in the sample itself, and that allows there to be that kind of natural feeling when it's not hitting, and then instantly it's taken away. And that's kind of this concept of undersensitized, the interaction between the digital space and the natural space. I think it might even be automating the waterfall a little bit. Yeah, takes that down too with it. And so the third kind of part of the beat itself, not counting the ambiance, is this sample which I almost used as a snare, which is counting down
22, 21, 20.
It's counting down from 22 all the way down to 1, which is where that part of the beat drops out. And this is on the 2. So it really acts as like the snare for Kwame's verse. And I think that kind of guided him a little bit, and that can be a helpful thing to have. And so that's really it for the first part. You have this chop, you have this 808, you have this snare type sample. This was actually pulled from a very interesting tape, like this kind of meditation for children, where it leads them through this like dolphin dream time thing. That was something I wanted to play with a little bit more. That would have been in the spaces that I used the bird song.
Imagine that you can feel into the energies of these crystals.
And so that's really it for the first part. And then it breaks out after that into this huge...
Where I stand today, still at the waterfall.
This huge use of the sample, this huge mellotron, this huge rainstorm effect, these reverse drums. There's some seagulls here too. I wanted it to feel like it was at this massive expanse, almost like a sea. And the sample here is a different version of the sample with this Valhalla vintage verb that it's being run through. I put this 1970s effect on it too. And then once this comes in, it's in less of a huge room eventually. And so the chords here are actually something that I came up with by myself, completely independently from the sample, and it almost fit together too perfectly, and you can hear them isolated here. And then along with that, there's this amazing violin solo that I originally wanted to play by itself on the violin, in real life, but the recording didn't come out so great, so I ran it through this contact patch, the Balkan Ethnic Orchestra, Gypsy Romantic Violin. Very expressive, very expressive. And so along with that, there's this labs bass that largely kind of follows it, but there is some movement that it adds. Well, the movement is in there, but it just follows the root note of every chord from the mellotron. And then there's also this big serum, which I'll isolate because it gets a little buried, but I think it has a big subconscious effect. It has this very glistening feel to it, and I almost wanted to echo that feeling from the Dolphin Dreamtime sample, and a lot of the sounds in that record really felt like that. And so along with that, there's this drum break that I reversed, as you can see right here, and it gets... There's a phaser on that too, a very big phaser too. I had to lower it a little bit, but it makes it feel very metallic. There's also some RC20 distorting it a lot, putting some space on it. You can feel a lot of this track was very, very reverbed. So, and then you have the bird song, which is the sample from a TikTok that I found actually. And I reached out to the poet and I asked if they could record it with no background music. And so I got back this.
The bird song. As the bird sings the universe's tune, I think of you.
I wanted it to feel a little bit muffled among this kind of chaotic feeling that all the reverb is doing in this huge room. So I did actually take down the treble to make it less defined, and I also put some distortion and wobble on it to give it a almost retro feel from the RC20. And so that's pretty much all for this part.
As the birds sing the universe's tune, I think of you. As we spin unconsciously into the light and uncontrollable darkness, I think of you. You.
So right here, everything kind of breaks down, and suddenly there's a lot less reverb. Suddenly the room has caved in, and there's this almost comforting feeling that comes from these chords, which is a slightly less dissonant version of what the mellotron was doing. There's still some kind of tension and release in every third chord, really. And so this is being played by Nexus E-piano with some reverb on it, some limiter. And that's really it for this part. And so moving on from that, there's this break right here before Wabo comes in.
Promise to my baby life. Promise to my baby life.
And so here we bring back the mellotron from Nexus, and there's also this very hard kick coming in again from the drill folder, and there's also this perk with a lot of reverb on it, as you can see on channel 26. Just huge reverb. Decay is 10 seconds, that's really big.
Promise to my baby life. Promise to my baby life.
So, I mean, there's a lot of reverb going on here. Suddenly it breaks out, and then there's a little feeling of that reverb coming back right here. So I wanted to take you out of the room, take you back in, and then make it almost feel like you're looking into what the room once was.
Promise to my baby life. Promise to my baby life.
So there's this slabs bass again. And there's also this pluck, which I believe is from... Oh, it's actually a one-shot kit. Again, more RC20, more space, more distortion. This wobble stereo is something I really like to use a lot. It just fills up more space between the headphones.
Promise to my baby life.
The other thing that I have happening here, what this means right here, the kick peak amount, is that with the side chain, the kick is taking up a lot more room off the mellotron than it was before as this curve comes down. So that's really all for this part. And right here we have the introduction of these strings from the BBC orchestra with some tremolo on them.
Try the 16 for the 16.
You can hear that here. Some dissonance here, especially since those notes are so close together. Especially with the tremolo, I think there was this feeling of uneasiness that I brought out with this.
Try the 16 for the 16.
And then this bass line here is no longer the labs. It's actually a live bass played by this guy Leon at Berkeley who I met. And I was a little bit hesitant about using this originally because it did make it feel a little bit too lively. But I think again it brought out that contrast between the digital and the physical spaces that I really wanted to accentuate with this project. Let's see what I'm running that through. So again, RC20, my favorite plugin of all time. Some crunch, some wobble, some space. I took the magnitude off a little bit because I didn't want to be too harsh on the bass. Pro C, some compression, Pro Q, probably just to take off the high end.
Got a question. When did
Okay, so that's that part. There's a little bit of a riser right here. Labs bass comes back, mellotron comes back, Rhodes comes back with an EQ on it that it didn't have before. Pluck comes back right here. Strings come back. Basically this is everything except the sample that came before it, just all building up to this ending, which brings it back to the tonic here. This was a bass that I never used before. This deep pad sign, very roomy feel again, like a lot of reverb on the bass, which isn't something I tend to do. And then the mellotron also holds out this note. And then it goes back to the tonic, giving us this feel that everything is resolved, especially as the outro to this project. That was something I wanted it to feel like, especially after all the transitions and how this really felt like it came together as a story. And then the birdsong sample comes back in. You can see the CQ right here that I talked about on the Rhodes. But that is pretty much it for this whole song. And I think Kwame and Wabo both did an amazing job matching the energy that I wanted to bring out with this beat. I think the addition of these chords was really my favorite thing about it. It just all came together so beautifully, and it was everything I wanted to achieve with this project all in one song. So that'll be it for today. Make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more breakdowns like this.